Welcome, Tony Ruesing here at Fuel for Faith and Freedom. I'm so glad you decided to join us today. My guest is someone that we've interviewed before. She's a very busy lady, but she took out time from her busy schedule to come back, and she has such an interesting story. I wanted to bring it to your attention. Jeanny Alexandre, thanks for joining us today. Jeanny, I am so glad that we have this opportunity to visit again. This will be our second interview together.
Second time, to charm.
There were so many things that people said about the last interview and some of the things that you shared with us.
Yeah.
And one of the things they really emphasized was how you make decisions. And so why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Well, decisions are really the building block that we use to experience life. So, when you wake up, you make a decision to wake up. When, you don't have a choice whether you wake up or not, but to get up out of bed, you make that decision to go to work, to care for your family. These are all decisions and choices that we make every day. And so for me, I think what people need tools in helping themselves learn how to process decision making is understanding the lens by which you're making them. Like if you're making decisions all the time on your own, with your own strength and your own understanding, then you're going to experience a particular type of life. But if you've included, say, faith, the process of believing in a higher power, someone that has the future and kind of has a way to give you kind of like an in on some of your decisions, you might want to think about using that route so that you can make not just a decision, we all make them, but you want to make the best decision. And so I find that people who have a spiritual component to their life, a faith based life, those people, they're not perfect, but they almost seem to make the best decisions because they're not just getting up and making decisions. They're including God in their decisions. They're praying about certain decisions. They have a community of people who have the like-mindedness, if that's even a word, where they just get together and they, bounce ideas off of each other. It's so important that, you have a community with you because sometimes, two eyes are great, but four are better.
Yep.
And sometimes, you need that different perspective when you're making a decision.
When you and I spoke about this the last time,
Right.
It was just before some very big decisions were made for us.
Correct.
And we ended up, I think it was in December
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
And there was all of these things going on at that time that literally changed our world.
Literally. Yeah.
It made a big difference.
Yeah. And I've learned in that change that if there's one thing you can't control, is change.
Yeah, that's right.
Change is coming. And in 2020, boy, did everything change. We thought, I remember thinking, this isn't going to last too long. And then it was 2 or 3 years of us continuously experiencing change that challenged us as a people, not just challenge us. The changes didn't just challenge us for each other, how we would, interact with each other, but these changes challenged us on how we would interact with ourselves.
Do you think that still is in place as well? In other words, the people that were able to still find a way to interact with others as opposed to setting themselves off and apart and staying in what I would refer to as a lonely position. Do you think there's a difference between how people have come through that?
Absolutely. 100%. Like I said before, people who have a community and, maybe had a faith-based community, they understood the importance of going right back into that because that is literally the source of life as opposed to being ostracized. And I think in the, previous interview, I said, one thing not to do is, isolate yourself for too long, because then you start to lose touch even with yourself, because we are each other's mirrors. You know what I'm saying? Like, you won't have a clear perspective of yourself if you're constantly with yourself. You need someone else who's going to be able to fully see you and give you a great response of how you are being perceived. And I think that's, those of us who bounce back into that, really bounce back better than we were even before the pandemic.
It's almost as if we look for genuineness by recognizing it in others.
Correct.
So when we were talking about decisions and you gave us some wonderful insights into how to do that and do it better, there are so many people who procrastinate, who wait, and they find themselves feeling really uncomfortable. Now, they talk about success and all these other things, but there's still an emptiness there. And the procrastination is a big part of it. They just can't make decisions, and they worry when it comes to change, how they are supposed to go into the next step.
Right. I mean, I can completely understand that. People procrastinate out of fear. They don't know the outcome of their decision, so they don't make a decision, or they wait on, till the last minute to make a decision, or even the past point. And so my encouragement to someone who struggles with this is understand that the currency that you have isn't really money. Our true currency is time.
Yes, that's good.
We don't get that back.
No, we don't.
You being, procrastinating and waiting, you're losing time.
Oh, you sure are.
And so one of my encouragements would be, okay, now don't get freaked out by this and start making crazy decisions, but make the decisions. Don't sit and wait for things to happen to you. You happen to the things.
Right.
And so I've learned that people get to this point when they understand and have a clearer vision of why they were put on this planet. I think people procrastinate a lot, or people who struggle with procrastination, I find that they have a purpose issue. If you know what you're supposed to do, if you know why you were born, if you know and you have a mandate on something to accomplish in this planet, then you don't have time to procrastinate. Sure. Procrastination is not your friend, because things have to get done. And decisions, I find the decision making process for a person who has purpose becomes much faster, much easier, because they have a goal and a purpose. So I would encourage those who find that they are having issues with procrastination or decision making. Maybe you might need to figure out your purpose.
It's almost as if that they get anxious because things are changing and they're happening so fast, and things are happening fast.
They are.
Now, I go back to when we did our first interview. I think you were relatively new in the role that you have now. So how have you changed in the time since that first interview back in, I believe it was December 2020?
And I had just moved June 2020.
Okay.
So, I mean, when I tell you I was in a new community and then the world shut down. And then we were slowly picking back up. But I'll have to say, that slowing down for me, because I had just come from such a fast-paced life that, I know a lot of people struggled with our pandemic, but I found that I learned so much about myself, and I learned so much about the beauty of a Sabbath. I feel like God gave the world a Sabbath.
Yes.
Like, everybody stop. And we'll slowly pick things back up. And I think we're getting back to that fast-paced mode of living again, which I think it has its purpose. But I feel like I don't want us to, I think what changed me the most is understanding the beauty of resting in God.
Okay.
Learning that fast pace isn't always good for the soul. I think sometimes we feel we get into this, every day, let's produce, let's do mass productions, let's get stuff done. And then what? It's like, let's hurry to wait. Right. And I think we've lived and developed a lifestyle where we're always, sometimes we don't even know why we're doing things so fast. And I hope and pray as we get back into the groove of things as a world and a people that we learned from our, past mistakes with this fast-paced, busy living. And just as crazy as the pandemic was, and as nuts as all the decisions that were made were, I feel like there was a beauty in the stop.
Yeah.
There was a lesson to be learned in resting and just taking the time to experience the self and how God made us. So though I'm not opposed to fast pace, I think what changed for me personally, because I was such a fast paced person, was, slow down. Everyone has a pace.
Sure.
And I've become more patient, Tony. I was shocked at how patient God, I tell people, you pray for patience, God might give you a pandemic. I'm not sure how he'll answer that. But for me, it was more like, I've learned that God, the first thing when you read the Bible, in 1 Corinthians 13, the first thing that is a attribute and a description of love is patience.
Oh, beautiful.
It says love is patient.
Yeah.
Love is kind.
Yeah.
Love is humble. Love forgives all things. So I think in this season that I've gone through, even though I was new and I was in this new position, I've learned that I had to love people, not in the way that I thought people could be loved, but in the way that God made for people to be loved.
Beautiful.
And it just meant being patient with them.
Well, and being patient with them happened because you were patient with yourself.
Right.
And so when we think about this decision making that we've been talking about, and how change is making changes all the time, and if we recognize that this fast pace you're describing happens because we have so many choices to make,
Right.
that it becomes important to make more wise choices. And so the what you're sharing with us is an example of that.
Right.
If you're making decisions, make sure you include prayer.
Right.
Because prayer gives us insight that we wouldn't otherwise have. And then when something like this occurred in our lives, we use it in the proper way. And the proper way was, it teaches us something about ourselves we need to know.
Yes.
And then, even though we're in a fast-paced world, we can become patient with ourselves, so we become more patient with others.
Absolutely. One of the biggest quotes that I might forget who quoted it, but it changed my life concerning this topic, and I hope it changes yours too. I'm about to blow your mind. Are you ready? You might have heard it before, but pretend you haven't.
Ready.
When you're born, you look like your parents.
Yeah.
But when you die, you look like your choices.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's unbelievable. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Changed my life.
Yeah.
It just broadens the perspective of the importance of making the right choice.
Yeah.
We're not perfect, but the right choice is available to be made, because when you have access to God and you have that connection with the future holder, you will die looking like those choices.
I love the term future holder, because it does put us in the right direction. And the right direction and making right decisions is all about wisdom.
That's right.
I think the only way we get to wisdom is describing what you're suggesting. When you make these decisions, know where to start. When you move forward and you have so many decisions to make wise choices.
That's right.
And that's where the finish is, or the new beginning is,
correct.
if you will. And it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and you know what? Also, to encourage people, it takes the pressure off of you of having to have everything right, because you're going to the future holder.
Yeah.
And so when you go to him and you place him in the right position to help you make these decisions and choices, then the pressure's off. It's not, I've got to rush and do this and I've got to get this right. It's more like, you know what? I'm following God, and I really feel led to make this decision. And it's just peaceful.
It is peaceful. One thing that I'm reminded of is all things are as they need be.
That's right.
And that is saying that if I'm patient, it's because I'm trying to move in the right direction and I'm being obedient.
That's
and I'm
right.
surrendering my will to God's will. And if that happens, I think it makes a big difference in our lives.
Absolutely. And when that happens, we really experience love because love is patient.
Someone told me that when you take the Beatitudes, love is kind, and you just take the word love out and put Jesus there, it is love.
That's right.
And it put Jesus in each one of those statements.
That's good.
And all of a sudden, it really brings it to life.
I love it because I love that you just said that because God said what? I am the way, the truth.
And the light.
I mean, it's all full circle. And so, people tell me, well, why are you so joyful? Well, I've got the life.
Yeah.
Why are you so patient? Well, I've got the life.
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but it's right.
And God never said it'd be easy.
No.
But what he did say was we can be obedient. And if we are, things are going to be different than if you're not. That makes a big difference.
A huge
It really
difference.
does. When you were sharing this a minute ago about how you've come to these conclusions, one of the things I'm reminded of is that when people really are struggling with themselves, if they help someone else, the advantage to them is far greater than anything can give away because they can't give away themselves. All they can do is help and encourage someone, and the encouragement that comes back to you is many times more than what they give.
Absolutely. It's the concept of the planting of the seed. You never just get one seed back.
Yeah.
Like if you plant one corn kernel, you're not going to get one back. You're going to get a whole bunch. It's the same concept. You give, even if you give the little bit that you have, you're going to reap 100-fold. It's just the concept of life.
And the release that comes with that is beyond anything we can imagine.
You can't measure it. Absolutely. We live this life. It's just, my hope is that people would truly be encouraged in the abundance that's available to them just by developing a relationship with God.
Well, going back to the pandemic and those folks that are still struggling, trying to get back from that, maybe they need to switch their words to thank you for this opportunity as opposed to, I don't know what's going to happen next.
Absolutely. Perspective helps you process the change. If you're coming at your change with a negative attitude, then the result is going to be negative.
Yeah.
But if you're coming at your change with a positive attitude, then 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a positive result.
Absolutely.
Because you're really the catalyst. You're the common denominator in all that's changing. The change. You're the consistent thing in the change.
Yeah.
And so if I take a car into the storm, I'm not going to come out driving a cow.
Right.
The car's leaving with me in the storm because I took me in the storm. Now, it may damage the car a little bit, but I'm not going to, walk out of that storm, riding a horse.
That's right.
So in life, you are the consistent thing that's experiencing life. So as you're going through a change, how you perceive yourself, how you perceive that change will determine the result that you feel at the end.
And when we're thinking about change and we get worried about it, we get anxious about it, if we go back to this peaceful place, this patience with ourselves place, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm curious about with regard to how you process this information is the value is always found in our willingness to surrender the part of ourselves that needs to change.
Yes.
And hang on to the pieces that have been put inside of us that are going to help and benefit someone else.
Absolutely.
It means that we're taking the emphasis off ourselves to see someone else. And that's loving ourselves enough to love other people. And that's a big deal. And that's what we're supposed to do.
Correct. If you can get that, then you will have a life worth living.
Yeah. There's I think it was Ken Blanchard said that ego, E-G-O, is edging God out. And when we recognize that it's there as our own importance
Right.
as opposed to where the importance belongs. And that's looking at our Heavenly Father and looking for His guidance. That makes a big difference.
I mean, because we didn't put ourselves here.
No, we didn't.
Somehow we think we did,
Yeah.
but we really didn't put ourselves here. So it only makes sense to look at the Creator who created us and ask, what? You put me here? What would you like me to do?
Yeah. And what would you like me to do is the right way to approach that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And it's interesting in the prayer piece. You mentioned prayer early on, and we sometimes pray in a way that we want it to be our way. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do this. I think I'm doing the right thing. As opposed to what's your will, not
What would
mine.
you like us to do?
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't know where we get that from. I think it's going back to the whole ego thing.
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
We're using God Himself to edge Himself out.
Yeah,
because
that's
we'll go
right.
to Him and ask and ask Him what we want.
Yeah.
And so I've learned, as the lower that you can understand that you truly are compared to God,
Yeah.
the higher you'll experience it.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a beautiful way to say it.
I mean, there's no other way. There's no other perspective for me. Every decision I make, I'm like, listen, I have no idea what 2 minutes from now
Yeah,
is going to happen. You do. Help.
that's right.
Help me make the right decision.
And recently, we heard a message about how important it is that Holy Spirit come and dwell in us.
Right.
And I'm reminded of the example that Jesus always gave us. He said, love our enemies.
Yes.
That changed dramatically what everybody thought. And when He loved His enemies, He was really serious about what that meant. And the major thing that just fascinates me about that is the empathy piece of it.
Yes.
Because the empathy is stronger than anyone can imagine.
Right.
They see it as something that they don't understand. Jesus understood empathy so clearly
Yes.
and lived it to the very time when He was put on the cross and continued. Forgive my enemies, forgive them, for they don't
Correct.
know what they're doing.
And to just piggyback off of what you're saying, I've learned in my life that unless you really have a relationship with God, the Creator, you don't really understand it, the power of empathy.
Yeah,
Because it's very different than sympathy.
yeah,
Because to empathize with someone
Yes.
is to place yourself in their shoes.
yes,
To sympathize with someone is to say, well, I have an understand. I think I can support you in
Yes,
this, or
yes.
I can understand what you're going through. I can't feel what you're going through. And unless you've got a relationship with God, because think about it. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows the biblical narrative of Jesus's life, but He was betrayed by a very disciple that He washed his feet.
yeah,
And He knew this disciple would betray Him and still empathized with his enemy.
still called Him friend.
Still called him, still died
Yes,
for him.
yes,
That to me is one of the most amazing, more powerful impacts of Jesus's ministry. That He asks us, no greater love. Remember I said patient, kind. That's what love is. No greater patience, no greater kindness
yeah.
than anybody can have than to lay down their life
It's beautiful.
for a friend, even if that friend is your enemy.
Yeah,
Chew on that.
yeah. Jeannie, this has been such a treat to have this opportunity to
I
be with
enjoy
you.
coming. It's great.
Well, and I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. I'll come back every time.
All right.
This was fun. Thanks for having me again.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate you tuning in today, and we're glad that you did. Fuel for Faith and Freedom is for people who face challenges and want to have a resource. You know, when you go through life day to day, you're going to have struggles. It happens to all of us. But when you have that struggle and your fuel tank gets a little bit low, what you want to be able to do is tap a resource that can be useful. And you can do that by writing us a note at tony@fuelforfaith.com or tony@fuelforfreedom.com. You make the choice, you decide. And if you have a story you'd like to share with us, feel free to let us take a look at it. And if we take a look at it and it's something we can agree on, I'd love to interview you. We're trying to help people recognize we all need to find our way, and the way we do it is by helping each other. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.